a short conversation, but I was like, this is going nowhere. I'm done. So, you weren't helping the situation either. I admit, I was going a bit too far. I do apologize for that. But you, dude, you've gone a little too far as well. And when I left, you basically like, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Correct. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Bye-bye. Because it's like, dude, we weren't friends. I have no attachment to you. I hate to be blunt. Well, I mean, actually, I don't need to censor myself. He's never gonna see this. Hi there. I didn't see you there for a second. Ignore that. That's just one of the many videos that you can get as a perk on my Patreon. That's just one of the many videos that you can get as a perk on my Patreon. So feel free to join my Patreon today. Just $1 a month will get you access to all those things, even though it's supposed to be a thing that you only get exclusively for $5, but you know, whatever. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's get right into the news. First, an interesting thing that came out of Nebraska, because Nebraska, for those who don't know, is interesting because Nebraska is one of the few states in the country that has a unicameral legislature, meaning that there's only one legislative body. And this one got into a very interesting situation because here's what happened. A Republican senator by the name of Steve Halloran decided that in order to spread his message of banning books, he would decide to read a book with a graphic rape scene and insert the name of a female colleague into
Senator Halloran, you're yielded 3 minutes 35.
Into that
spine
thing.
Was crushed into the ground. Glass cut in my back and behind. He kneeled back, raised your legs, he said. I'm going to read from the transcript. Senator Bosselman spoke about, quote, today I'm going to talk to you. This is from a proponent of 441. Today I'm going to talk to you about a library book that I found in 16. I'm a virgin. Put it in your mouth. I kneel before him, Senator Kavanaugh. That's language that should not be in front of children.
You don't know anything about anyone else's life. And I can tell you that women in this body have been subject to sexual violence. I didn't know you were capable of such cruelty.
I would yield my time to Senator John Kavanaugh.
So yeah, that's basically the situation. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh is a very prominent progressive Democratic legislator in the district, like in the state. And this guy literally just he decided to spread his message, to read, like, for some reason, insert her name. Well, I know the reason why he wanted to do it. Insert her name into literal rape books. Let me see. Let's look at the comments. Gee, I wonder what party it belongs to. Shameful and embarrassing. Do not ban books. I have read the Bible. Have you? Anyways, regardless, there's not really much else in the comment section. And apparently, his only defense was, oh, no, you see, I wasn't trying to make those, like, creepy sexual comments about you. Let me see if they're in the video. Here it is. He said, because his defense was this. I wasn't trying to make those creepy sexual comments about you.
The whole point of this conversation is not...
I was trying to make creepy sexual comments about your brother. That's his defense, as if that makes anything better. Speaking of things that are not better, let's move on to the next story. Very tragic. It's the situation involving Next Benedict. So for those that don't know, Next Benedict is a non-binary teenager who was in Oklahoma. And what happened is a bunch of students beat them up, and due to the abuse that they received at the school, they ended up dying. Now, here's the full situation. So, what happened was Next Benedict had a teacher who was supportive of trans students. And libs of TikTok doxed that teacher. Then that teacher got fired. So what ended up happening is Next Benedict suffered major forms of harassment from a bunch of the students, and I think even teachers to an extent. Like, teachers didn't respect their pronouns, and teachers didn't respect their identity. And what ended up happening was Nex and a couple of other students got involved in physical altercations. And what ended up happening was, due to these physical altercations and the fact that I don't know if it's in this video.
Owasso police.
Let me see. I don't know if they say it in this video, but like, this is the video of them in the hospital.
Yes. So,
I'm glad you're here.
So what happened today?
I got jumped.
This is some of the last videos showing 16-year-old Next Benedict alive. A school resource officer goes to the hospital to interview Next and their mom, Sue Benedict.
She told me, she said, Mom, she said, these 3 girls there are just, they won't leave me alone. They're making comments, they're calling us names, they're throwing stuff at us.
Next says they didn't know the other girls, who are a grade younger than them. The students meeting while in-school suspension.
So they just up and decided to just start messing with you. There was
Because of the way that we dress.
Okay, so you didn't do anything at all at any point in time that would have, even a couple days ago or even a month ago or anything like that.
I don't know these girls.
Next goes on to explain what happened leading up to the altercation in the bathroom.
After we sat chairs, we went to the bathroom.
Okay.
And I was talking to my friend.
Okay, so I don't know if they say that, but in the video, the person there explicitly says, like, since this, because basically they went in, it shows a little bit in there, like,
You can see the group of girls
see, those are the girls that abused Nex. And then Nex and a friend of theirs enters the bathroom. And what ends up happening is that they end up leaving. Nex is taken to the hospital. Like, Nex is the one who got the blame. And then what ends up happening is that Nex, due to their situation, the officer indicated that it was possible the incident might be seen as mutual. Because what ended up happening was, like, they ended up harassing Nex in the bathroom. And then they made comments. And then they were throwing names. Throwing stuff. And what ended up happening is that Nex threw water on the girls. So it was that they were being bullied by these girls, and then they end up fighting back. And since we all know this typical spiel of schools and violence, it's like, it's never the bullies that ending up facing any repercussions. It's always the kid that fights back. Due to that fact, the teacher's like, look, Nex, you're probably gonna get blamed too, so don't do anything about this. And then Nex apparently ended up overdosing on drugs due to the fact that they were going to get harassed relentlessly, and there was nothing they could do about it. Man, we sure live in a wonderful society where people can just get harassed and bullied and then die. It's so fucking crazy. Anyways, justice for Nex, even though I just showed you the news story that said that Nex, like, the kids would not face any repercussions due to the actions. Which is like, okay, fuck them. It's like, fuck you. Justice for Nex. Nex did nothing wrong. Trans rights are human rights. Anybody who disagrees, go away. Fuck off. I don't care. Next story, speaking of not trans rights. So, Elon Musk is taking the side of a literal Nazi. So, what ended up happening is that Elon Musk has been, of course, doing the very strange thing of, like, being fucking stupid. So, Elon Musk, here's what happened. Many of you may remember an infamous webcomic artist by the name of Stone Toss. Stone Toss is a very well-known individual who was very, very, very controversial. Makes a lot of like very like super anti. Fuck, come on. Basically, they're like extremely anti-Semitic. Like they're literally a Nazi. They're literally a Nazi. No ifs, ands, or buts. They are literally a Nazi. And recently, Elon Musk, a very interesting report has come out that has revealed who Stone Toss is. Hans Christian Grabenier of Spring, Texas. This thing apparently goes in all depth, explaining not only who Stone Toss is, shows their connection to their former viewpoint red panels, which is a thing that's been well known for a while. Or at least it's been secretly well known. This one's really fucking weird. A flirk. Because this is weird. Because a flirk. Let me see if I remember. Let me see. Because this is the fucking weird thing. Calls his NFTs flirks. This is going to be really weird. But this is going to require some explanation because this was actually a thing that potentially led to a different identity for them. Flirks Schmorky. Because there was actually a theory that he was actually a different creator called Schmorky. Because Schmorky had a similar art style. And if you don't know who Schmorky is a literal pedophile. So there was a conspiracy theory about that. I just watched a video about detailing the history of Schmorky and they mentioned that thing, which I find funny because literally it's just never mind. Regardless, this is not really relevant to the story, but it's just something interesting. But basically, Elon Musk has been taking into account because what ended up happening is someone found out who Stone Toss was, posted that information publicly on Twitter, and that information has now since become essentially public knowledge at this point. Usually what ends up happening with a lot of these faceless creators, since Stone Toss himself is a very prominent meme, he ended up getting featured on Know Your Meme. In fact, to the point where Stone Toss's identity is literally a meme in and of itself. But Elon Musk, due to the fact that he is a literal Nazi as well, and has shared Stone Toss comics, as I've shown before, he literally bans users who literally will just post Hans Christian Grabenier, which many people found interesting due to the fact that there are many places and points of people who are left-wing who have been doxxed on Twitter. As it shows right here, Elon Musk banning anybody who publishes the publicly known identity of Stone Toss, Know Your Meme, and Daily Costs while liking the far-right dead naming and doxing LGBTQ accounts. And literally, Andy No has doxed fucking has dead named and doxed people before, and yet Elon Musk is literally following him. Elon Musk has literally turned the site into a hellscape. And this is gonna be very good because of not very good in the sense of it's very good, but this is very interesting in the sense that I'm of course making a video. I'm making a video that has some relation to this topic, and this will be very interesting to point out, especially considering this big form of hypocrisy that I was already going to point out, and it was the fact that, despite the fact that Elon Musk has literally used his site to allow someone to post literal child porn on, it. The prominent Twitter account, Dom Lucre, literally posted literal child porn on Twitter, and that person gets to be online, but people who post Stone Toss's identity, that's a bridge too far. Even though, literally, there wasn't necessarily a rule indicating that a person posting Stone Toss's name would be any issue. Because apparently it's apparently it's not necessarily doxing if you just point out the person's name and appearance. Apparently it would be. But again, despite the fact that it has a zero tolerance of child sexual exploitation, this Don Lucre is like, yeah, we can put this guy back on. We can put this guy back on. Literally, it's just like posting. Literally, this is what he posted. Not the picture, obviously, but he's posted literal like CP on Twitter, and then it's like, no, this guy can come on, but not people who like dox a Nazi. Fucking crazy. Anyway, speaking of crazy, the Republicans are doing something crazy. Republican Representative Mike Gallagher will resign early, leaving House Majority hanging by a thread. House Republicans will lose another member in Kennebuck, Colorado on Friday. Gallagher's departure on April 19th will leave Republicans with just one vote to spare on legislation. And this is very interesting, and Gallagher is doing something very fucking funny. I don't know if it says it in this article, but here's the kicker about the difference between Ken Buck leaving and Mike Gallagher leaving. Due to the fact that Mike Gallagher is leaving on April 19th, they can't fill his seat. Apparently, the rules are that Mike Gallagher had to resign earlier in the year in order for a special election to be held to fill in his seat. But his seat can't be filled anymore. His seat will be vacant up to the November election. And, if I remember correctly, Ken Buck actually stated that there were going to be 3 Republicans that were going to resign in the upcoming weeks. So some people have been speculating on who the other Republicans might be who will be resigning in the upcoming election to give the Democrats a potential lead in the election. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. I don't know if maybe Mike Gallagher is the only one who's going to run. I mean, not going to run, I guess. He was already planning on retiring, but he's decided to resign early, basically as a final fuck you to the Republican Party. And that's going to be interesting to see how that plans out. I really just want to see how this pans out. Anyways, okay, right here. Under Wisconsin state law, vacancies for the second Tuesday of April are filled in the general election, so Gallagher's replacement will be decided in November, and his seat will remain empty until January. Alright. And this one, even though I know this site is trash, I wanted to cover this news story, but no other website that I could see actually explicitly covered this aspect of the story. So I know this website is trash, and like far-right dribble, the Federalist, I know this website is like far-right dribble, whatever, but it was the only site that actually covered this explicit part of the story. So, let me explain. So, if you don't remember, the Democratic Party canceled the Florida primary basically because Joe Biden was the only candidate that managed to get on the ballot down there. So they canceled their state primary. And basically, if it was I'm trying to think. Did they cancel the primary directly, or did they? I'm pretty sure they just canceled the presidential primary. And if there are any other states that had multiple candidates that filed, they were still running in a ballot. But the fact of the matter is, a presidential name definitely helps turnout. And what ended up happening is a lot of Republicans ended up flipping a couple of seats. Let me see if it's right here. Republicans backed Bruce Rector won Clearwater's nonpartisan race for mayor, while Marco Manninel flipped city council to seat 3, and Ryan Cotton flipped seat 2, defeating incumbent Democrat Mark Bunker, who was endorsed by the Florida Democratic primary. Biden narrowly, and here's the thing, the county that these guys won in, Biden won. Oakland mayor race, beating town commissioner Salvador Ramos. Taylor had run as a strong conservative in Northern Florida politics. Nick Nesta, Republican, won another term as flipped the Democrat held seat. Basically, a lot of Democrats that were in very possibly winnable seats got fucked due to the fact that Biden and the Democratic Party killed their chances due to the fact that he just didn't keep his name on the ballots. Which is somewhat troubling due to the fact that Florida is still considered a swing seat, but many Democrats have essentially given up on Florida, which, well, they have to make sure they have a plan to move forward, and I think Biden has a plan. He does have a plan for something. He did say that he was going to put a little more effort in Texas. I don't know if he also said he was going to put effort in Florida, but regardless, I guess we'll move on to the main topic of this episode now. Alright, so this episode is going to be interesting, because this episode is going to be me reacting to a previous video of mine, The Spoiler Effect Debunked. Now, this episode I actually found to be very interesting. I very much like this episode It's one of my favorite episodes from like the prior to 2021, like prior to 2021. It's one of my favorite videos. And honestly, this video, like I genuinely want to know how I would react to this video now that I'm a bit more, I guess, less like third party 100% type guy. Since I'm a bit less like that, I want to see, like, do I still believe the arguments hold up in this video? If I had to take a guess, I would say the arguments still relatively hold up, because I chose the arguments that I really, really did think held up amongst scrutiny. I didn't really, I tried my best to avoid ones that were like a little bit more nuanced, and tried to avoid, basically the only thing that I could even remotely say might be a difference in opinion is that I think I might be a bit more nuanced in the perspective. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. Let's watch the video. The spoiler effect is best defined like this. There are 3 candidates. Candidate A, candidate B, and candidate C. Candidates A and B are major party candidates who are radically different. I can tell that this video is old quality. Look, it's 480p. And I can tell it's from the old like format. What does ambient mode even do? Okay, that's just, it basically just changes the outline. I knew it did that, but I don't think this video really warrants that, so whatever. For either an ideology or in voting base. Candidate C is a minor party candidate who espouses similar views to candidate A, so voters who would normally vote for candidate A, who are more purist or are just not fans of candidate A, are inclined to vote for candidate C, thus splitting the... Hold on, I need to check something. I'm pretty sure this is accurate, but I just want to check something real quick. Because if you notice, this is the Seguro Popular logo. Like from Seguro Popular. The fucking like Mexican public option. I'm pretty sure the reason why I did that was because I'm pretty sure the reason why I did that was because I wanted I'm pretty sure the only reason I did that is because I had that episode on file. Like, I had the episode on file. I just want to check real quick. Yeah, I guess I had that episode on file. I don't know if I used it. Did I use it in this one? Whatever, it doesn't really matter. I'm pretty sure I used it in that one. That's why I used it in this episode. Not fans of candidate A are inclined to vote for candidate C, thus splitting the vote and allowing candidate B a possible win. The most commonly cited examples of the spoiler effect being used in U.S. elections are in 1912, when Teddy Roosevelt supposedly spoiled the election for Woodrow Wilson, and the 2000 election, where Ralph Nader supposedly spoiled the election for George W. Bush. However, third-party advocates say the spoiler effect either just flat-out doesn't exist, or is inappropriately used to target third-party candidates as a way to sort of quell opposition to the two major parties, Ralph Nader being best quoted as saying, "Al Gore thinks we're supposed to be helping him get elected. I've got news." This old video sounds insufferable. Oh, fuck. I mean, you could tell really just like, man, this, like if I told you that I recorded this episode on my bed, you'd go, oh, I believe it. For Al Gore, if he can't beat the bumbling Texas governor with that terrible record, he ought to go back to Tennessee. Now, personally, I happen to be in the group that is more skeptical of the spoiler effect, even personally dubbing it the spoiler myth. And yeah, I personally dub it the spoiler myth. No one else has called it that before at all. Let me just give a couple of reasons why I sort of came to that conclusion. First, I guess I should address one point isn't that just kind of how elections work? Is this an argument? I don't know. Aren't you supposed to all be trying to get voters? And whoever gets the most... this one's interesting. Because this is a joke that no one got. Okay, so isn't that how elections work? First of all, let's just... No, I guess I'll just mention the joke first. I'll also mention this. You see this? This was like before I knew that in the old editing software that I used, that you could actually like move the thing individually. So this is like on like a path that's already predetermined. Trying to get voters, and whoever gets the most voters. I guess I'll mention this because this is a joke that again nobody got. So these vote totals are like all these vote totals are jokes, like in jokes and references. So E down here, 666 votes. Take a wild guess whether that is supposed to be a joke about. Wink, wink. D is 69420. Joke on that. This one is 70300, which is my birthday. There's 80085, which is boobs. Haha, get it, boobs. And this one is 5/10/2018, which is the day that my first video came out. Nobody picked up on the joke, even when I put it in my Discord server, like, haha, see, what's this a reference to? And then they, like, most of them only got, like, haha, 69420 and 666, but otherwise they didn't really get much else. Wins? Like, hypothetically, wouldn't a Republican really want a bunch of Democrats to be voting for him in a certain state that could lead to him winning? But some say, well, I mean, sure, but that's not necessarily a good thing, because minor party candidates, they don't have a chance of winning, so they really shouldn't be trying to steal votes from another major party candidate. However, you should also note that then by that notion, shouldn't Republicans stop trying to campaign in states like New York or California? I mean, they'd be absolutely thrilled to have Democrats vote for them in those states. Could lead to them winning, maybe. Though to be fair, that's more of a semi-point. A more legitimate... Okay, so let's address that actual point. Because I don't think that first part was actually in the script of the video. I think that part I just threw in because I just thought of it. And I'll be real, I think that's why it's best that that one was not even like part of the main arguments. Because it's not really that good. I mean, I just gotta be real. Republicans don't try to win in California. And Democrats don't try to win in Texas. Well, actually, they do now. Scratch that, so that's a little irrelevant. Maybe my point is actually more valid than I realized. Because it's actually a good thing that... let me think. I'm trying to think. Because this one might actually be a case for spoilers then. Because it's like, in these states, like the Democrats are doing better in Texas now. And many people are saying that there's a chance that actually Texas could actually go blue in the next election or 2028. Maybe that's possible. I don't know. And swing states have changed. Like that's a factor that we need to understand. States have changed whether or not they lean red, lean blue, or swing. At one point in time, it was widely expected that Texas would be a deep blue state and that a Republican would never win in Texas. Now that's basically now we consider that as an impossibility, but it's possible that it could just be a swing state now. And in much of that same case, New York used to be considered a swing state. Now, there's no chance in hell that it is ever going to be a swing state again. In that same token, California was at one point considered a swing state. Florida was considered a swing state. And many people consider Florida as a done case. They're like, it's going to be red forever now. Despite the fact that at one point it used to be deep blue. To the point where I think I bring it up in the video. I think I bring it up in this video. Because in 1912, like Woodrow Wilson won the election by a massive landslide. To the point where the second place candidate was Eugene Debs, and it was like a massive drop in support. Honestly, I don't know what that first point is, and it might be rocky, so it's a good thing that wasn't even a real point. Alright, so let's go into the actual first argument. The point comes from the fact that most of the time the spoiler effect kind of ignores actual facts of certain voters. What do I mean by that? Well, of course, there's the loaded assumption that a person who voted for candidate C would have automatically voted for candidate A if they had not been in the race. Again, that's a pretty loaded assumption. People make their own decisions of their own volition. Sometimes it's voting for a third-party candidate. Sometimes it means not voting at all. Like, for example, how can we know that every single Ralph Nader voter would have voted for Al Gore if Nader wasn't even in the race? Notice that tiny little line. Cringe.
The assumption purely comes from the notion that Al Gore and Ralph Nader had huge similarities, when in fact during the election Nader was explicitly running on the things that he and Gore
fuck. Spelling mistake? Aw, man.
or differed on. In fact, in the big state that everybody complained about, Florida, he didn't even attract a certain number of Democrats. He only attracted 24,000 Democrats, whereas 308,000 Democrats voted for George Bush in the state. Plus, Florida had a huge other set of factors in play, like SCOTUS canceling the proposed recount and such. Mr. Beats' video probably explains it better.
Yeah, here it is. Mr. Beats' video on Ralph Nader.
Similar situation comes from the 2018 Ohio District 12 special election.
Oh, okay, that's a good one.
After the Democrat lost a very narrow race, the Green Party candidate was blamed, as well as Russia, despite the fact that even if all of the Green Party voters voted for the Democrat, it would have still led to a Republican victory. Another commonly cited supposed spoiler is Ross Perot.
I guess I should address the previous the points up to this point, and yeah, it does show certain things, because to some people that's the thing. Like, the fact that 24,000 Democrats voted for Ralph Nader is proof enough, because the vote margin in Florida was so small. But the fact of the matter is, it's like, it's the same thing with like those, like the majority, like those Democrats who had a larger support base voting for Bush. It's like, you really, like, even if you're a registered voter, it's like, you're not a monolith. The voters aren't necessarily a monolith. Much of the same way, like, there are many people who, like, because a lot of people point out the fact, like, oh, you see, you claim that there was this big party switch, and yet all these extreme racist people, they were still registered Democrats near the end. It's like, yeah, sure, they were still registered Democrats, but they overwhelmingly voted for the Republicans in the presidential and, like, other offices. They overwhelmingly voted Republican. And that's the truth. Much in the same way, like, it's the same thing. Like, they're not a monolith. There are Democrats that voted for Nader, and there's Democrats that voted for Bush. Much in the same way, there were Democrats who voted for Carter, and there were Democrats who voted for Wallace. There were Democrats who voted for Nixon. Like, it was a big thing. Like, Nixon and Reagan proudly claimed, like, Democrats for Reagan. It's the same thing. That's basically point 5, where it was like, yeah, people are trying to win all the voters, so you can't necessarily say, oh, this candidate spoiled another candidate, blah, blah.
With people just, in this day and age, half-heartedly just saying, oh yeah, Ross Perot definitely spoiled the election for George Bush, when they have zero evidence to back up that claim. Many people try to cite his supposed conservative beliefs, because as we all know, a pro-choice protectionist tax-raising populist really screams conservative. And if you want to look at the data, you'd see that only 27% of Perot's voters identified as conservatives. The remaining percentage makes up liberals and independents are usually seen as Democratic-leaning. Another piece of data people don't really look into is
this one. It's a little bit more complex than I'm pointing out in this video, because I think it's a little bit issue, just because it's like independent is considered like quote unquote centrist, and it was like, I think even at the time I was a little like concerned about this, because I understood, like, I didn't necessarily know like the fullest instance of like who was considered an independent back in the 90s. But back in the modern day, most people who are considered politically independent lean a lot more left wing than we understand. That's a fact. Hold on, let me see if I can actually let me see if there's like a. I'll just put Perot just so I can just so I can copy paste it, just so there's no like bad stuff that comes up in my search engine. (1992) election, because we have the data points on the wiki. Voter demographics. Okay, here we go. Conservative Republicans. As we could see, most of the like mainline voters, like, see, really the only ones that moderate independents right here, the majority of them voted for Perot. Liberal independents overwhelmingly still voted for Clinton, with only a decent number of vote going there. Well, moderate independents did also go to Clinton a lot. As you can see, it's just like, let's check the last cycle. Maybe the last cycle can give us some like extra data points that might help. I don't know if the voter demographics one is available on the last election. Maybe it is. Okay. Not really that much helpful. Like, you see, even still, it's like they leaned a lot more like Democrat than Republican because of the fact that like moderates leaned a lot more to caucus. I guess you could say independents leaned a decent bit more Republican. Let me check. You see, I'd have to like recrunch all the numbers to like see if this is right, but I do know overwhelmingly it is a lot more. It just basically the end of the result, it doesn't really matter all the numbers because it's like most people still conclude that Perot didn't really take that much vote from, let me see. Basically they agree that it's like he took a decent amount from both candidates because they were like, because it's actually proof in the election. Hold on, more proof in the election. I don't know if I had to do all that, but like the two states that Perot did the best in, let me check. It's down here somewhere. What are the states he did the best in? He did the best in Maine and Alaska. I think these are the two states that he did. Does it show it on here or does it show it on here? Yeah, see, he did the best in Maine and is it enough in Alaska that it shows his like face there? Yeah. Alaska was a deep red state. It was a super deep red state and Perot did well there. Meanwhile, Maine, okay, well, I guess I got proven wrong on that aspect. Haha. I got proven wrong on this part. Haha. Oh yeah, he did well enough that he got second place. I forgot. A slim second, but yeah, a second. He did well in Texas too, I think. Oh yeah, this is what I was thinking. Cause like by this point, like for the most part, Texas was like considered a blue state, and then it like slowly started shifting red. And this was the part where I'm like, okay, but it was like still somewhat close to an extent. And it's like, yeah, but like Perot did it decent enough in the state that like basically he did well in states that were pretty much guaranteed to go one way or another. It doesn't necessarily, you'd have to like do a lot of arithmetic and a lot of other like hoo-ha to figure out exactly how you could factor in all the Perot supporters. Because there are some people who say like, oh yeah, all the Perot supporters like just definitely 100% would have went to Bush. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's like, really? Especially considering of the two, he was considered a lot more ideologically linked to Clinton. Because Clinton was also pitching himself as like, I'm the moderate guy who can get things done. Let me see. I can put a thing right here to check. Spoiler. The effects of Ross Perot's candidacy have been contentious point of debate for many years. In the ensuing months of the election, various Republicans asserted that Perot acted as a spoiler, enough of detriment to that Bush to lost him the election, while many dissatisfied conservatives may have voted for Ross Perot to protest Bush's tax increase. Further examination of Perot on election night exit polls not only show that Perot siphoned votes nearly equally, but roughly 2/3 of those voters who cited Bush's broken no to tax policy, which is very important, voted for Bill Clinton. See, so it's like a decent number of people who were turned off from him literally just went off to vote for Clinton. Because the truth of the matter for a lot of people is the fact that if you're voting for a third-party candidate, you've already given up on one of the two major candidates. I don't know if I mentioned this in this video, but that's a fact. And it's the same, and it's the reason why fucking what's his name? John B. Anderson, why he doesn't get the blame for like spoiling the election for Carter, because all the people who were going to vote for Anderson had already just said fuck you and fuck you. So they were already going to vote, and they're already going to... It was either throw away your votes or vote for John B. Anderson. And that's basically what ended up happening. Much in the same way, people who were voting for Perot were probably just not going to... Like, basically, it seemed like it was just... They were going to vote for Perot, or they were just not going to vote at all. And that's a similar thing with a lot of other things. The same thing with, like, fucking, the new, like, third-party candidates. Fucking, like, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and, Cornel West. It's like, neither of the people who are going to vote for either of these two candidates are going to vote for one of the two major candidates. If they hadn't made up their mind, then they wouldn't have, they would have already made up their mind, they would have voting for these guys already. Much in the same way with me. Like, I already made my mind that I was going to vote for Joe Biden in the upcoming 2020 election. It didn't, and like, literally, Cornel West entered after I made up my decision, and I'm just like, no, I'm not backing away, because I already made the decision. Anyways, let's just move on to keep talking about this.
Except liberals and independents are usually seen as Democratic leaning. Another piece of data people don't really look into is the non-voter factor.
Yeah, non-voter factor.
As I stated before, voters can choose not to vote at all if the candidates provided to them are not satisfactory, and rather blaming the certain number of voters who happen to vote for a minor party candidate, you should focus on the larger people who don't vote at all factor.
Is this true? I actually haven't verified the accuracy of this, if this is true or not. I haven't verified the accuracy. Hold on. I can't risk you guys looking at my search engine results, even though it's probably just going to show like politics-related crap. I just don't want anything to come
factor.
up.
In the 2016 election, only 55.67% of registered voters bothered to vote at all.
Alright, that one we can actually verify, because we have that part right here. I think it was different. I think it was different. But it's basically around the same numbers. Like, let's see turnout. Turnout isn't the best for the elections. Ooh! Okay, I'm pretty sure that's already in, like, fucking a bunch of conservatives, like, conspiracy theory things. But, like, there needs to be one about the non-voter factor. We don't really see a lot of, like, polls regarding the non-voter factor, and that's the sad thing, because, like, it's the same thing with, like, you remember what I'm fucking talking about, right? What's it called? Survivor fallacy? Survivor fallacy. Survivorship bias, that's what it's called. It's basically like this. It's like, look, it's like, you look at the birds, it's like, these are, we analyzed all this, and then we're like, I'm trying to remember how to say it correctly, because I'm not a well-spoken guy, as you could tell. Okay, so, the way this works is, there are a bunch of bullets on a bunch of planes, and it's like, we mapped out all the bullets of all the that come from all the warplanes that come back. Alright, and judging by this, you would think, oh, like most people would think on a first glance, we need to put extra armoring on these areas where the bullet holes are through. But that's not how it works. Notice how there are no bullet holes here, 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 no bullet holes here. Notice how these are the areas without bullet holes. That's because the planes that get bullet holes in these areas, they don't come back. So, rather than focusing on these, we need to focus on these. And it's the same thing with, like, the voting factor. These are the people who end up turning out to vote in the election. This is what happens. These are the people who don't vote at all. Even though the population that represents these people are going to be way significantly more than the people who turn out to vote for a smaller person, then, like, we focus on these people more than the other ones. And I get into it in this video.
At all, that leaves a decent amount of the population that wasn't satisfied with any of the candidates on their ballot. But who do you think got the most media coverage? The 44.33% of people who didn't bother to vote, or the 4.35% that voted for Gary Johnson or Jill Stein?
See? That's my point. Why didn't we pay attention to this amount of... Why didn't we pay attention to the fact that 39.98%, like nearly 40% of the population, didn't bother to vote? Why didn't we focus on those people? I think what ended up happening was that the number that I put there in the video and the number that was on there, I think I put the number that was the amount of people who voted for Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and then that remaining percentage were the people who either voted for Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, or it was the people who voted for all the minor party candidates.
Or the 4.35% that voted for Gary Johnson or Jill Stein.
And that's the point. It's, again, that 4.35%, if Gary Johnson and Jill Stein weren't on the ballot, they weren't going to be voting for anybody. And that's a fact. Maybe on an individual level, okay, well, I'm doing some of the things that I complain that other people do. I'm generalizing voters. And that's one of the biggest problems that I have with the spoiler effect. It's like, you're generalizing voters. You're like, oh, these people would have automatically voted for Gary Johnson and Jill, like these people who voted for Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, they would have voted for Hillary and Trump if neither of their candidates that they wanted were on the ballots. How do you know that? How do you know that those people who voted for Jill Stein wouldn't have just voted for the next, like, smaller third-party candidates? How, like, she would have, like, what if the voters voted overwhelmingly for Gloria LaRiva? And how do we know that Gary Johnson voters wouldn't have just turned to vote for Evan McMullen? How do we know that fact? We don't know that fact. And that's the problem. We don't know that fact. Much in the same way we don't necessarily know the fact that, like, people who would have overwhelmingly, like, these people would have overwhelmingly stayed home if neither of these candidates were on the ballot. But that's a more fair assumption to make because we've seen just the data point that out with the John B. Anderson voters and with the fact that people, like, I mean, just look at the people who go on, who bitch and moan about, like, oh, we need Cornel West the president, or we need Robert F. Kennedy Jr. None of these people are going to vote for Biden ever, or Trump ever. Neither of these people are going to vote for either of those candidates because they made up their mind that they want to vote for these smaller candidates. It's the same way. It's the same thing of, like, oh, they're trying to convince people in the Socialist Equality Party to vote for a major party candidate. No, I got into an argument with one of the major people of the Socialist Equality Party, and I literally told them, like, hypothetical scenario. Your ideal candidate, they espouse literally every single thing that you espouse. Every single thing, down to a T. And yet they run as a Democrat. Alright? What do? And they go, the person that I would support would never run as a Democrat. And that's the point. It's the same thing with the minor party candidates. The people who've already made their mind that they're going to vote for a minor party candidate have stated that there's going to be nothing that would make them vote for a major party candidate. I'm like one of the very few exceptions that, honestly, in that rule, and it's only because I would have technically done a thing that's, like, technically, like, quote-unquote, not necessarily legal. It's called, like, vote switching. It's not like, I don't think it's, like, necessarily, like, illegal, because people will openly talk about doing it, and it's where you basically, like, at one point I thought about, like, asking a person who was, like, in a safe blue seat, like, hey, vote for Howie Hawkins on my behalf, and I'll vote for Joe Biden on your behalf. That didn't end up panning out, but, you know, regardless.
35% that voted for Gary Johnson or Jill Stein. It really comes.
And I learned that because I watched Penn Jillette, who basically said he got like 5 of his safe state, like Hillary Clinton supporters to vote for Gary Johnson, and then he voted for Hillary Clinton. And now he's just a diehard Joe Biden supporter. So we got him, boys. We got him, boys.
Off more as a scapegoat rather than actually being a problem that needs to be fixed. Because if it was a problem that needed to be fixed, they could fix it in a snap.
Off center. I hate that. I hate that. I hate that this is off center. Why is this so off center? I do hate that my current video editing software also has this problem where it's like it's hard to make things centered because you can't center. It's not like Photoshop where you can like take the background, take the text, out of the text, and then just completely center it all. And sometimes when I'm editing the text, especially if it's a long block of text, I have to literally drag it so that it's perfect. I have to make sure that it stays perfectly still when I put it there, because if I don't, then it's going to like be ever so slightly off center and it's going to bother me. But yes, this is also a good point. If it's a problem that needs to be fixed, why can't you fix it?
They could fix it in a snap. What do I mean by that? Let's put you in the shoes of whatever major party you prefer. You see that there is a minor party
it's
that could
digging under the
potentially
ground,
be hurting your electoral chances in a state or in a district. You could try suppressing that party, which the major parties have been known to do from time to time.
I think this is a reference to the Montana Green Party suppression that was going on at the time.
But that would just alienate those voters even more so from you.
I miss when I did those little text things where it was like I just randomly would do that. I miss when I did that. I don't do it anymore, or at least I don't do it as often because it's just a little extra work that it's just like,
And would it make your political rivals rise in popularity for standing up for them? Here's another solution. You could institute a voting system that would make it so that those voters of that smaller party who's like-minded to you.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot. This was in the era in 2020 where I was like giving up on certain aspects, and then I was just leaving areas of the video blank a lot.
Will inevitably be voting for you via instant runoff voting, better known as ranked choice voting, where they would rank the candidates.
And I still maintain this. I think a lot of people have kind of moved on to a different form of voting, but I think ranked choice voting is honestly the best form of voting for the United States, unless we were to move on to something like a proportional representation. I understand this fact, and it's like it's not going to like increase. This is not going to increase the amount of people who vote for minor parties. Minor parties are such. This is kind of funny that a lot of minor parties are actually bringing this issue to attention, and I think I pointed this out like at the time where it's like it's funny that a lot of like minor party people bring this to attention because like if this gets passed, minor parties are literally in the most literal sense done. They like what minor parties want is for people to be so purist on their first ballot that they're gonna be like, okay, we're gonna like vote overwhelmingly for the minor party candidate because we're not bound by because we're gonna push for the end result. But the fact of the matter is, ranked choice voting is still somewhat complicated to a lot of people. So what's going to happen is that people are just going to still overwhelmingly vote for their preferred candidate in the first round. That's just a fact. And I think we saw this with Alaska when it first happened. I guess I'll go to this. Peltola. So I could show you what I mean. Even though the first person to do this that did it right, he did it the first one, the correct way, is the person that people have been claiming that she's fucking, and that's Jared Golden. Let me see. She's in the Blue Dog Coalition, so she'd be listed with him. She'd be listed with him there. Okay, let me see. Like, ironically, Golden and her are like the first two people to like be voted in ranked choice voting, even though they're like the least progressive members of like Congress. So basically, this was apparently just ranked choice voting that was done like quote unquote right. They just literally just ranked the candidates and then moved on. Much in the same way Tiffany Bond in the general election, Tiffany Bond and Will Hoare, they just overwhelmingly voted for Gold in the next round and whatever. But Alaska's ranked choice voting system was like they kind of fucked up a lot in their ranked choice voting system simply because of the fact that, like, if you don't remember the controversy that ended up happening, here's what happened. In the first round of the election, like, it was the top 4 people were Mary Paltola, Sarah Palin, Nick Bekich, and the person who was 4th place was Al Gross, who was the nominee who was an independent nominee in the previous Senate cycle. And what ended up happening was Al Gross suspended his bid and then endorsed Mary Paltola and the candidate right under him. Like, what's her name? Her name was like something Sweeney. But due to the fact that he dropped out so late, it ended up having so that it was only these 3 people. So Paltola she just ended up winning. And it seemed most people thought that her win was going to be a fluke. But then next time came around and the election ended up going on very smoothly, and she just ended up getting a larger vote total. I guess technically some third parties might think that this might be beneficial to them. It could be. I don't know. We don't have that system in the national state, and to the point where it is like relevant to be. It's not really that big enough that we can actually do any statistics in it.
Based on how much they want the candidate to win, their first choice would be their, of course, ideal candidate, whereas their second or third choice might be simply to prevent their least liked candidate from winning the office. Hypothetically, in this election, people who would be more inclined to vote for the Green Party candidate, due to their ideological pureness to their lefty ideas, would then vote for Biden as their second choice to be strictly anti-Trump. The issue is, every time ranked choice voting gets introduced in the House of Representatives, it gets co-sponsors in the single digits.
Ah, yes, look, right here. This was the ranked choice voting bill at the time. I think Raskin is the primary supporter, so it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, maybe not. So, no way. It's just because he's the sponsor, and this is the co-sponsor list. And yeah, just doing a quick glance at them, it's like, it's very interesting that these are the people that ended up co-sponsoring this bill. Barbara Lee is not necessarily that surprising, and I don't necessarily think Ro Khanna is that surprising either. And of course, Ayanna Pressley isn't that surprising. Like, ideologically, they make sense. I'm surprised that they're a lot more, like, right-wing Democrats, but maybe it's because they were, like, afraid of, like, them being on the way out, so they thought that maybe they would benefit from a ranked choice voting system. And Moulton, I'll be frank, actually is also not surprising me either, because Moulton kind of built himself up as like that, like, oh, I'm this new trendy guy, so of course he'd probably be on board with this.
And sometimes when it is passed, major parties try to undermine it or get rid of it. Maine became the first state to implement and use ranked choice voting, but every step of the way, it was undermined and almost not implemented at all. If the major parties truly...
In the same vein, like, Alaska's doing that as well. Like Alaska Republicans are trying their best to try and get rid of ranked choice voting because it's not benefiting them, and that's the fact. Much in the same, like, and here's actually a fun fact that many people don't know. Many people don't know that, like, back in the day, Republicans actually overwhelmingly wanted ranked choice voting to an extent in Alaska. There was a bill in Alaska a long time ago that would have implemented some form of ranked choice voting. It would have been a lot more like it's similar to the system they have now, but it would have been a lot more like the California system, where it's like top 2 vote getters, and then I don't know how necessarily, maybe it's like I think it was a ranked primary ballot, and then a like normal general election ballot. And Republicans, nationwide Republicans in fact, overwhelmingly backed that bill. They overwhelmingly backed it. I think McCain literally was on the phone telling people, hey, this is a good idea. Much the same way, I think Palin was also in favor of the bill. And now Palin is being one of the top people to say, hey, this new ranked choice voting system that we have now, we don't like that. That's because it's the same reason why a lot of California Republicans and California, like, minor party candidates hate the top-tiered system that they have now because they don't benefit from that system. And that's kind of how it works. If it benefits you, then you like it. If it doesn't benefit you, you don't like it. Much in the same way, you'll be in favor of the filibuster when the people you like are doing it.
I believe that this was a problem that needed to be fixed. Why would they not fix it? Well, I mean, unless they just needed a scapegoat. But why would anybody need a scapegoat in politics? And lastly, if the spoiler effect is truly just a thing in politics that is just there, should it be 100% proven and 100% foolproof?
This is the argument that I'm the most proud of, that I was the most proud of. Let's see if I still like this argument now.
What if I told you that there was an election that was specifically tailored for the spoiler effect to happen? Specifically tailored. All the factors for the spoiler effect were there. Candidates splitting off from one of the two major parties and forming their own parties, stealing a sizable amount of their bases, and running very serious, very big campaigns. And yet, despite this, the party they left remained victorious. Well, let's go back to 1948. Harry Truman was angering two prominent factions within the Democratic Party, New Deal Progressive Democrats and Southern Conservative Democrats. Both factions tried to primary him, with Richard Russell Jr. representing the Southern Democrats and Claude Pepper representing the New Deal Democrats. Then, after they lost, Strom Thurmond and Henry Wallace left the party to form two of their own parties and took these two Democratic bases with them.
Funny tidbits. I don't know why, but I couldn't find this picture anymore. I couldn't find this picture. I liked this picture because this picture perfectly exemplified the situation with the thing. I used it in my first video, and I liked it. And I used that, and I try to use this picture a lot. I tried to use this picture a lot, at least. So, I liked using it. But I couldn't find this picture again when I wanted to use it for this video. So what I ended up doing was, I ended up taking, hold on, let me see if I can prove it.
Politician who served as the 103rd governor of South Carolina and would later serve 48 years as a U.S. senator, starting as the Democratic Party after the election was over. Now, this was one of two factions of the Democratic Party that split off in 1948 alongside Henry Wallace and his...
Oh, no, wait. I just wanted to... Hold on, wait. Is it... Do I use
Wallace
it?
and his Progressive Party, which split off in the other direction of the further left in the Democratic Party. I cite this election as being one of the major pieces of evidence that the spoiler effect does not exist because of the fact...
Oh, I just wanted to use, like, the actual literal this picture only? I thought I had, like, the... I thought I had the pictures already put on there. I guess it makes sense. These ones aren't necessarily completely on center, so I guess it makes sense. But anyways, like, look, see... If the fact that... You might say, well, whatever, these are just the same pictures. No, I literally took a screenshot of this video and then put the screenshot on here and then, like, chroma keyed or cropped that part out. You can notice, like, a very small hint of red on the line. You have to get innovative when you're making YouTube videos.
With them, and these weren't, like, small bases. These were huge.
Southerners have been the party's backbone since inception, and them aligned with the left is what won them 12 years in the White House and supermajorities from that same time.
Huge bases within the parties. One of their bases was seen as the thing keeping the Democratic Party alive in the South. People thought if Democrats lost the South, it was over and they would never be able to win again.
Hold on. Did I hear that right?
People thought if Democrats lost the South...
fun tidbits.
Democratic Party alive in the South. People thought if Democrats lost the South...
If you hear that, that's probably, like, the fire alarm, like... doing the thing that it does when it is low on battery. I don't know if that was a thing that I was going through at the time.
It was over and they would never be able to win again.
I was mentioning the party switch now. I need to go back and add a card for this part, because that was the whole point of me doing like certain videos, because like I'm supposed to like go back and then add some cards to have video subjects like explain in the future. Regardless, I guess I'll do that at one point.
Under the rules of the spoiler effect, you'd think Bye Bye Harry, and many people at the time thought that too. However, if you know anything about politics, you know the story and you know how it ends. And this isn't like Ralph Nader or Jill Stein, who could have supposedly taken some like-minded voters away from them. No, these are people who literally took members of their party with them when they left, taking sizable amounts.
Yeah, and this is why this argument is, like, honestly, the only reason why I would probably go so far as to say this video still holds up is literally just because of this end argument. Just like 1948, like, that's the exception. Like, most of the other efforts of the spoiler effect in the United States have like some wiggle room, like, maybe, maybe not. But this is one where it's like, this election is explicitly tailor-made for the spoiler effect to have happened. Everybody was expecting the spoiler effect to happen, and yet it didn't. And people still don't know how Truman made up. Many people don't know. Like, maybe, like, it could have been a lot of factors. It could have been people, like, saying, okay, maybe we gave these guys a chance, we don't like them anymore, and now we're going back to Truman. I don't know. But regardless, Truman made up the vote total, so
of their base with them to support their candidacies, and yet Truman still walked out victorious. That's honestly one of the biggest nails in the coffin of the spoiler myth. When you have the perfect election for it, just not providing the evidence you need. Now, of course, I'll be fair. I'll be legitimately fair and acknowledge that I am not 100% on this. I'm 100% on the examples I provided, but on its bearing on the entire spoiler myth / effect, I'm gonna say 80-70% sure.
Why don't you put the numbers on there?
No. But of course, you may have to look at it more on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It's like, this is not necessarily, like, fair. Like, just assuming that all the people who voted for... Because, I don't know, is this accurate? This might be accurate. But this would have been the vote total. This would have been... Because I think a lot of people try to do the same thing, where, like, they take the, like, vote totals of both the Bull Moose and the Republicans in the 1912 election. With Roosevelt I'll just put this on here and see if most people come to the same results. I'll just put United Republican Party. Because most people already factor in, like, you know, you of course have to factor in the states that, like, he won. What's this supposed to mean? Like, most people already have to factor in the states that, like, Roosevelt won, and of course the ones that Taft won. If you're gonna add, first you add those ones together, obviously, but then you have to go individually in each of these states and then see if the vote totals match up, like if the vote totals could have led to something interesting. And even then, we don't necessarily know, because there were some people who were fans of the Progressive Party that weren't Republicans. They were Democrats. John Milliken Parker ran as the vice presidential nominee of the Progressive Party in the, like, next election, and he was a Democrat for the most. He was Democrat. So yeah.
And this video is just more me presenting my case as there are a lot of people who present their case for the spoiler effect, and I feel that maybe I should present my case countering them. I just feel that maybe we shouldn't just flat out dismiss all third-party candidates as wasted votes and spoiling the election without at least having a reasonable case from the other side. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified if you...
And yeah, that's basically it. Honestly, yeah, video still holds up based on that last argument alone. If Roosevelt had truly never, I mean, that's just the thing. The only thing I could even remotely renege on are two things. One, primaries. Primaries are a little bit different due to the fact that the voter base of a primary is noticeably smaller than the main party. And there's a lot more shenanigans that you can do, especially if you are heads of the party. And we've seen that before with many people. Like, here's an example that I would use. Mondaire Jones. Mondaire Jones, many people would argue, is played a spoiler for Uline Yo, like, so that she wouldn't get the nomination, especially considering all the shady shenanigans regarding him. Maybe I can make a full video explaining that situation. Maybe I can make a part 2 where I expand my points, whatever. I could see myself remaking this video just so I can make better points and explaining the full in-depths on the scenario. It would probably be a lot more longer, and it wouldn't be this year. It might be next year. I don't know. Anyways, I might even make a poll that says which of these videos would you rather see me remake and be better. But that's the first thing I would say. Primary is a little bit more susceptible, and also I would also mention the 2020 Democratic primary. You're not ready for that red pill yet. But next, the next argument I would say is on primaries, the first one. Oh yeah. I would also renege that it could be more case by case in certain elements. I would not necessarily claim that 1912 is probably the closest presidential election that you could actually go and say that could be a sign of the spoiler effect. That's the only presidential election that I could even remotely say is close enough to an argument for the spoiler effect. But again, some of the arguments that I make against the spoiler effect still hold up in that regard, because we can't necessarily say that every single person who would have voted for Roosevelt would have voted for Taft. We don't necessarily know that for a fact. What if there was someone who was and again, that's the thing. I'm going a little bit this is, I guess, again, this is probably one of those things where it's I'm not trying to say nothing again, because I've been saying this a lot to myself a lot recently, especially since I guess made the video. Could it be a little bit of this coming out? Because it's just that's always been how I am. A little bit. I'm more of a particulars person. Never get me never do the whole ifs, ands. Never I don't like generalizing. I like to be a bit specific in my regard. So, anyways, that's I guess all I have to say on that subject. Video still holds up. Might make a sequel and/or remake of this video, but I'll include some other. Here's some other video ideas that I might include. That might be the poll for this video. Which videos would you rather me remake? Because I have a couple of ideas that I could do for a remake of video. I already made this video. I did think about remaking the Reform Party video, just so I could include a little bit more at the end. Let me see. A video that I did think about remaking a little bit is the Eugene Debs video. That video, the Eugene Debs video. Maybe remaking the first Mexican presidential elections video. I don't know. I'll think of videos that I might want to remake and then put them in a poll later. But yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and click that bell to notify when a future video when it comes out. And if you see more content from me, you can go to my website, follow me on Twitter, join my Discord, or consider supporting me on Patreon.